Japan is actually way ahead of the United States and many countries for the science backing behind the therapeutic use of wilderness. And in fact, doctors will prescribe time in nature as a way to combat depression or anxiety or even autoimmune diseases and medical ailments such as those, because they have all the science backing that shows results.
This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. I explore the questions people think but don't ask out loud, either because they're taboo or thanks to cultural hypnosis. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Hey Curiositors, it's me, Meredith. So my goal with this episode is to ask the question, can being outside really improve mental health? I don't know why, but it feels like fresh air as a treatment plan feels a lot like your 6th grade coach telling you to walk it off when you sprained your ankle. Maybe it's because we look for complicated. If it's complicated, it must be sophisticated. If it's sophisticated, it must be effective. But as you'll hear me state in this episode, I also feel like a lot of us are ready for simple. Many of us lost our jobs in 2020, cut back our expenses, and started a journey of living more simply with the people and experiences that matter most. So maybe less is more when it comes to mental wellness. Be sure to listen to the end of the episode where my guest gives some really great tips on how you can start to realign yourself with nature in order to have more resilience, everywhere else. And if you've ever been curious where I find guests like these, it does vary a lot. So I started putting the source of each guest in my Monday email along with the regular info about the new episode. If you're not getting those and you want to be included, you can text REAL to 66866 if you're in the US, or you can go to meredithforreal.com if you're elsewhere. And huge thanks if you're one of my amazing loyal listeners. My mission is to create a curious community, and you're doing it every time you tune in. And if you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one with the Canadian woman who's been barefoot for 12 years. That's episode 130. And if you're someone who's enjoyed a few episodes, it would mean a lot to me if you left a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or the Good Pods app. And finally, if you're new here, welcome. Around here, we press play to get curious, disrupt the algorithm, and grow into better humans. I talk with everyone from counselors to con artists, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. There's no specific order to listen to the episodes. All right, enjoy the show. Most of us agree that spending time outdoors feels nice, but is it the answer to the growing mental health crisis? The second leading cause of death among teens and young adults globally is suicide. And depression is a leading cause of disability. But is taking a hike really the remedy? My next guest thinks so. He spent nearly all of his 20s as an outdoor nomad, spending most of his time in nature and able to fit all of his possessions in the back of a truck. He even lived in a teepee for 3 years. In his 30s, he got his master's degree in counseling. And in 2004, he combined his passions by founding Earthwalker, a service providing wilderness survival instruction, walk and talk outdoor counseling, and wilderness therapy adventures. Today, he's going to share how the outdoors can help us live with less angst and more ease. Survivalist, therapist, joyful boundary pusher, Jeff Adorador. Thanks for coming to the show.
Wow, that's quite the introduction. I love it. Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you here. I think most people could understand the draw of living a nomadic outdoor life. That sounds amazing. But I think what most people don't maybe understand as much is why you would go from having probably no cares in the world to taking on all of the cares of the world by pursuing your master's degree in counseling. So how did you come to that conclusion that you needed to do that?
That is kind of like, it's a long story. But to summarize, I think that all of us, when we're doing our best, we have to find our gifts. and some of us don't find those right away. And so throughout my nomadic 20s, like you explained, which is pretty accurate, I lived in Hawaii, Alaska, across the country. I was looking for myself, looking for my gifts. And I found that, my passion for nature could be combined well with helping others. And I love psychology. I really was intrigued by helping people be the best versions of themselves. And so I started asking good questions like, how does this formulate into a career?
I can relate to being lost in the right direction. So your story gives me hope.
Life's a journey.
It is. It is a journey, and it doesn't have to happen in the exact formula that is pre-prescribed, I guess you might say.
Absolutely.
I think mental health challenges are so normal right now that I think it's common for us to not even see them, in the world. Like, oh, hi, here's my depression. Show me yours. It's just a little bit too normal. But I'm wondering if when you came from being, connected with nature for so long, when you went into the mental health space, did anything stick out to you right away because of that contrast as coming in almost as an outsider?
It was a huge contrast, going from working in the wilderness in behavior modification programs and doing some guiding to working in conventional settings like the emergency room of a hospital, doing suicide assessments, or working in a school environment, doing school counseling. It's kind of like two different worlds. And the natural world, nature, has always been that recharge, that grounding piece that I can return to for my own wellness and clarity so that I can do the best at whatever else I'm doing. And so, years later, I figured out how to integrate that into my career. And I still, walk between worlds, so to speak, where I have, my conventional office here in Roseville, California, where I do traditional therapy practice, psychotherapy, counseling, in 1 hour sessions. And then I also take people outdoors for standard 2 hour sessions, walk and talk therapy sessions.
Did you notice any common causes when you were doing suicide triage in ER? Did you find any patterns of causality during that time?
Sure. I'd say the number one causality is like a lack of tribe, a lack of family.
Really?
Yeah. And in fact, one of the most important clinical questions you could ask somebody if they're suicidal is, do you have people? Do you have people that are a support system for you? And statistically, those who don't, have a greater propensity to follow through with their suicidal ideations.
Wow. I would not expect that at all. That must have been such a whiplash, being in the ER like that. I just think about even the environment of fluorescent lighting and,
totally.
cold floors.
Oh, completely. It's so bizarre. It's otherworldly to be, and I was working like a 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shift. It was 12 hours and there was no windows in my office. And I was simultaneously in grad school with that position. So I'd take advantage of slow nights and do my homework. And then all of a sudden it'd be on. And then have to, talk to the psychiatrists and work with these people who are in desperate states. So it was quite a whiplash. It was, hit the ground running, but it was a great experience. Great learning experience.
You knew that that's what you wanted to do. And so I imagine that gave you the strength. But for a lot of us who are particularly empathic, which I feel like a lot of the people in the mental health space are, being around people who are they're struggling can cause mental health issues for the empathic folks where they didn't previously exist. How did you handle that?
That's such a good point, Meredith, because I've been to several conferences where I see like massive amounts of mental health professionals gather, and I've noticed and observed people's vitality, just languishing, and just visibly obvious. I mean, you can see the look in the eye and the way that people are carrying their body and their overall health, has, and here are the front lines of mental health represented. And so I'm really passionate about self-care. I mean, you have to take care of the home base, with proper sleep, proper nutrition, proper exercise. The same thing I tell my clients. And so, that when I was making that transition of world, so to speak, where I was working out in the field in nature quite a bit, and then trying to be of this world more so, and get my degree and license as in these roles, that was a massive whiplash. And so, for example, that emergency room job, that only lasted about a year because I'm working graveyards, I'm inside. So I felt the effects of not only the lack of sleep and the weird sleep patterns and the circadian rhythm imbalances, but the lack of sunlight and this clinical environment all the time, closed doors. And so I have great empathy for those medical professionals or people who are working in these kind of environments consistently. They're taxing their health in a big way. So self-care is essential.
I agree. That's part of the reason why I was so interested when I learned about your organization, because you not only provide opportunities for just anyone, but also for mental health workers. And so it's almost like you have a vacation service that's like next level, like it's meaningful, and you come away not just belly full of margaritas, but you come with
therapeutic adventures. Yeah, that is something I'm promoting with my company, Earthwalker, and it's still there are more dreams to manifest there. But my wife and I have done some trips, hosted some trips to Bali, Indonesia, and this is pre-COVID, and so I'm having to adjust myself to post-COVID now. The Bali trips, the Bali quest is just, as you said, this kind of therapeutic adventure where you're doing yoga. My wife's a yoga instructor. So there's a perfect pairing there. We're visiting temples. We're learning how to surf. I'm a surfer. I love the ocean.
Me too.
So there's medicine there, it's, and so I love this concept of going on vacation where you're actually recharged and not like just paying off your credit card and paying off your taxed body, like have to recoup or something.
Exactly. I really love that idea. I mean, it does call to me. I won't lie. So how does the therapy, the walk and talk therapy work? Is it
Sure.
more like sit around a campfire, kumbaya style, or is it like, boot camp style, sweat out your bad behavior style?
No, actually nothing like that,
Okay.
honestly. So they're 2-hour sessions. Typically the walk and talk therapy is structured with about an hour and a half of walking. And depending upon the client and their ability, I'll choose a certain location. And so I live in the Sierras, the foothills of the Sierras. And so there's some beautiful trails all around. So I'm taking advantage of that. And, we'll hike shoulder to shoulder and do our counseling session, on the fly like that, all the while being influenced by the natural elements, the fresh air, the sunlight, the beautiful river scene, because I'm often hiking along the river there. And, for a lot of people, that just really clicks. Like the office is a great place for some people, like that containment, that security, that special little place. And hey, that works. And it's efficient and effective. But for some, they could just never find the results like we do on the trail with that light exercise and all the elements.
I mean, being in an office feels like a job interview to me, which
Sure.
like sets off like a performance mechanism in my brain where I'm like,
Yep. I get it.
and that
For a
is
lot of
not
people.
Zen. But when I'm moving, I definitely have like an unlocking of ideas and creativity and awareness. So, I mean, it resonates a lot with me. How does it compare clinically to, as far as like methodology and like time to get results to the office setting?
No, that's a good question. And to start out with, if you're a licensed therapist like myself, you have to check the boxes of all the conventional, ethics and legal issues, like the disclaimer forms about confidentiality. That's one of the biggest things. And the other thing is, of course, if you're taking a client in the natural setting, you should definitely have, some substantial training and like first aid or some guiding experience, because a wilderness scenario doesn't have the same kind of evacuation kind of ease, right, as a domestic situation. And say someone is suicidal, that kind of thing. So, back to your question, it really depends on the client. But most of my clients have really resonated with the walk and talk therapy. And I find, similar effectiveness, within the office and within the wilderness setting. It's just really dependent upon that client who resonates with the natural world. I have, however, found some clients to be in the office and then know that I do the walk and talk therapy and try that and have greater results because of the movement and because of the natural setting. It's nature has a way of stripping down our layers. It's stripping down our ego, and you get real.
That's so true. Yeah. What is it about being inside chronically that ends up being so bad for us?
Oh, wow. It's ironic because even in my office, like we'll take elements of nature and try to put it in our office, but there's no substitute, right? I have like my aromatherapy thing over there and my negative ion lamp and my air filter over there, right? Which is great for the office, but I mean, you can never substitute, walk by the river with all those negative ions from the water churning and the vitamin D from the sunlight and the trees give off a chemical called phytoncides that boosts our immune system. And there's a symbiotic relationship with the tree's phytoncides, which are the tree's natural defense. And it affects us in a positive way. And there was a ton of research that came out of Japan in early 2000s. Japan is actually way ahead of the United States and many countries for the science backing behind the therapeutic use of wilderness. And in fact, doctors will prescribe time in nature as a way to combat depression or anxiety or even autoimmune diseases and medical ailments such as those, because they have all the science backing that shows results.
Wow. Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. If you've got backyard barbecue plans for 2022, but mosquitoes are not invited, I recommend Insect. I've been using their pest control service for several years now. They have a certified mosquito identification specialist on staff, and pollinator care is always top of mind. If you live in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama, give them a call, ensec.net. The UWF Historic Trust. We shoot the show at the Pensacola Museum of History. It not only houses exhibits of lesser-known Pensacola history, it's an event space too. So if you need a unique space in downtown Pensacola for a fundraiser, networking event, or a corporate party, take a look at historicpensacola.org. And if you want to tour one of the 12 museums, get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Get emails by texting REAL to 66866. Now back to the show. Can you explain negative ions? I don't know that everyone listening will know what that significance of it.
I don't claim to be an expert on this, with regard to negative ions, but what I've researched is that anywhere that nature turns water, like waterfalls or the ocean waves turning, there are negative ions released. And there was a science study out of Japan again that showed that negative ions were as effective as depression pills in helping with depression symptoms.
Wow. Is there a certain amount of time that a person has to be outside and a certain frequency that they need to spend outdoors in order to see a difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer, but it alludes to why we feel so good when we're walking on the beach with waves crashing, or why we want to stop and observe a waterfall, not just because of the aesthetic beauty, but because there's something intuitive, there's something instinctual about just standing there and breathing it in, you know?
And how does Schumann's resonance tie into all this? I heard you say something about that in another interview. The earth has a certain frequency or something?
Sure. The Schumann's resonance, if you YouTube this and you can watch a video about clocks, like, old school clocks that were on a pendulum back and forth to keep the rhythm, will align themselves. I imagine much the same way women's menses cycles will align themselves when women hang out together for a prolonged period of time. So it's just another example of how we synchronize and resonate together and we're influenced by our environment. So, Schumann's resonance is just one example of how I think if we spend time in nature, we'll get on the frequency of the natural world.
And so this is why when we're inside chronically, that we're just out of sync. And so it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, that just off feeling can be caused by a disconnect between all of these elements that are scientifically studied, but not necessarily promoted, at least not in the US.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. More time in nature is going to be a healthy balance for you if you're spending lots of time inside, for sure. Take off your shoes and walk barefoot and feel that electromagnetic advantage there. Get in that theta brain wavelength, which is synonymous with that natural flow state that is often associated with being in nature. Our brain gets on that frequency.
Yes, I love all of that. I think it's funny how, like, the things that seemed fringe, hippie, crunchy.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're now coming to the forefront a little bit more, and people are going, you know what we're doing in the traditional sense isn't working. So let's take a look, not backwards, but let's just take a look in a broader way to what other options. And I'm finding there's a lot of commonality between some of what you're saying and what I'm beginning to learn more about indigenous practices. And you studied some indigenous practices in your 20s. Did you find anything that you learned to be personally really beneficial?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, I want to explain, like, when I'm in my 20s, I was kind of finding myself as a young man. I think I was very influenced by the studies of Native Americans and indigenous cultures. And it gave me such a great perspective because when you're 18, 19 years old, you're thinking, what do I do with my life? What am I becoming? Who am I going to be? That kind of thing. And all my friends, I grew up in Silicon Valley, were very influenced by the high tech, and they were, working for Hewlett Packard, and some of them were building like startup companies. And I was just off there in left field studying like Native American shamanism. I was drawn to these philosophies and spiritual principles. And I was just, trusting my compass. And essentially what I was trying to do is find an example of people and society that was very close to the natural world. And how did that influence their life? And I know we romanticize a lot about indigenous cultures, and indigenous cultures there's so much depth there. And I did study with some native teachers in North America. I just sought out these kind of mentorships and would just kind of show up and be persistent, and that often paid off. And sometimes people are like, well, get out of here, crazy long hair white boy who wants to be a Native American. But I did show up, and some people were very welcoming. Like, I lived in South Dakota with a Native family for summer, and rode horses bareback, and got to take part in some ceremony, and just unforgettable moments that leave a mark on me. And, there was beautiful examples of family loyalty and working with the earth, where some of the families were still working with wild bison and training horses and living on 1,000-acre plots. That opened my mind and helped me feed that appetite for freedom, a sense of freedom beyond just kind of more modern conventional living that we all can relate with too when we hop on a plane or commute to the office.
A lot of the ceremony and, what maybe we would call like ritual is, I think, lacking from what we think of when we think of what we need on a daily basis. You talked about needing a tribe being very important. And I learning that needing ritual or ceremony, whatever you want to call it, in your life is also important. I think everyone has a handful of ingredients, if you will, that makes their life work, that help them achieve more homeostasis more of the time. And it gets put on the back burner so often because, in my opinion, because of the industrialized mindset that we are accustomed to being in. And what I love about what you're doing is you have taken two things and blended them together in order to have one foot in that traditional setting and be able to help all the people you can help, but also to show them the things that helped you. And I think that gives credibility to the need for those things. And to me, that's really important work.
I appreciate that. Having a foot in each world has to do with not only like licensure and making sure the Board of Behavioral Science is I'm working within the ethical and legal confines of that. But it's also a reflection of, meeting a need. I think that's growing. I think more and more people are desiring a balance in their life. Instinctually moving towards more natural-based practices, and I think that mental health overall is evolving more towards that balance. You can see that with the practices of experiential therapies, just even yoga or body-centered somatic therapy, or even the use of plant medicines that are controversial, but have shown a lot of clinical impact for those with trauma or combat trauma or trauma in just needing some kind of breakthroughs that psychopharmacological intervention just isn't hitting, So there's a lot to be done still. And it's exciting to think about the possibilities of helping to promote mental health in the direction of more of a natural process.
I agree.
Help people out.
I think there's an elevated readiness since COVID. People are ready to not outsource their mental health. People are ready to, come into. I sound like such a hippie. Every time I catch myself describing, come into their bodies.
I
was just
have to
about
embrace your inner hippie. Just go out, hug a tree.
Okay,
it's good energy. It's all good. You can walk between worlds there.
Okay, great. I don't realize how much I sound like that until like a moment where I'm maybe, recording it.
I sometimes hug trees.
Well,
don't tell anybody.
I won't. Your secret is safe with me.
Yeah.
But people are ready, they're ready to go outside of that traditional framework and try some things. So if someone was listening to this and they're like, all right, Jeff, I'm ready to create some outdoor ritual in order to bring my spirit and my mind and my body back closer to being in sync with my, ancestral brain, really, because that's kind of what's happened. We got a little mismatch of modern life and our ancient lizard brains. And so does sitting in your car over lunch with your windows down do it? I mean, we need some practical tips for those folks out there,
Sure.
because when I talk to people about getting outdoors and being outside and being barefoot even, I talked with a woman who's been barefoot in Canada for 12 years, and that was in the spring that I spoke with her. And it inspired me. I had a foot injury anyway caused by a shoe, and that inspired me to not wear shoes. And so I've been barefoot a lot more, almost even in the grocery store. I hate to
Wow.
talk about dirty hippie.
Yeah.
But I really immediately I felt my mood improved almost immediately. It must have tapped into some childhood memory where I felt that rush of exhilaration of running through the grass or something.
Sure.
So can you give some practical tips for people who think that they already are getting out in nature enough by, eating in their car during lunch? How can they take it to the next level and really start to see measurable results in their mental health?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I wanted to comment really quick. One of my mentors was Cody Lundeen, and I still keep in touch with him now and again. But he is a survivalist, and he walks around barefoot all his life.
Really?
And so I'm sure there are some great. I mean, I'm confident that there's great attributes to that. Think about the pressure points. Think about the process of slowing down, because most of us don't have massive calluses, and so just the process of slowing down is good. So practical interventions would be just find some from natural world. I mean, not everybody's in different locations, of course. Not everybody has beautiful rivers and ocean right out their door, but the natural world is everywhere. So go find it in a park, in the corner of your yard, and go there without expectation of time. Go there without expectation of accomplishing much of anything, like a walking meditation. Take off your shoes, slow down, maybe sit down, maybe have, just create a ritual. Excuse me. Maybe you have a little towel or a rug or a mat or something, and you stretch on it. You lay down with your palms up to the sky, and you just close your eyes and you concentrate on feeling the breath in your chest. I mean, I'd say anything that's simple and enjoyable and promotes slowing down and being present is great for you, because we are always, I mean, in the conventional modern world, we're always like one step behind, it seems like, what's next? And, most of us have to exist in that space, of course, and be productive and thrive. But the system will decompensate. Your body health will languish if you don't take care of yourself. So plug into nature, get that balance.
And how about the plugging into some of your events? How can people stay in touch with what you're doing and maybe even participate, even if they're outside of the state of California, if they were to come visit maybe an event or something?
Sure. So I'm really excited about doing an annual training for mental health professionals, so wilderness therapy for mental health professionals. And my company is called Earthwalker, LLC.com. It's Earthwalker, but that is the address. And, as far as my private practice goes, I'm known as Jeff Adorador. And so you could Google search me like that. We can do some therapy sessions. If you come to my neck of the woods with walk and talk therapy. I can also meet on using Zoom or telephone, but that's the other techie world.
Yes,
or here in my office. Yeah.
And you're putting a hold on the adventure retreats, like you were mentioning Bali? Is that on hold for right now, or do you have any of those coming up?
My number one is my family. I'm a family man. And so I have a 1.5-year-old boy, and he deserves a lot of my time and presence. And so I'm teamed up with my wife on that. We've talked about the world travel events, and we're kind of putting that on hold for the moment. But I'll do a lot of local trainings. I can do some backpacking events. I often do a solo quest, which is a 3-day backpacking trip in the Sierras. And it involves really sitting alone for a while in a supervised way, in the safety of my guidance. And the intention of Solo Quest is really to get out of it what it is that you're seeking. You're at the crossroads of your life. You're, at the confluence of a divorce or a career change, or you just want some clarity on something. That's the 3-day, 2-night Solo Quest. Or there's relationship quests where I take couples out on a backpacking trip with the same kind of intention for growth for the couples. So those are the kind of events I really enjoy hosting through Earthwalker.
Those sound amazing. Thank you so much for taking time to share all of this. I hope it inspires people to get outside.
Thank you, Meredith. I appreciate your time and your enthusiasm for it.
Thanks for listening. If you've loved a couple episodes of this show, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or the Good Pods app. And if you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the Canadian woman who's been barefoot for 12 years, episode 130. Stay tuned next week when I talk with a former HR executive who runs a company providing medically assisted sex. Until next time.